Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you very much for the introduction. I work at Microsoft, and I support organizations accelerate their sustainability strategies. I'm actually new in this role. I've been in the role for about 2 or 3 years. I actually joined Microsoft and worked for their modern solutions area, but I had done sustainability prior to Microsoft, so I'd worked in sustainability communications and done some research projects in areas like climate finance and natural capital. So we are doing loads in sustainability, and hopefully you're going to hear about that today, but also our customers are demanding it more and more. So when they offered me the role, I thought, well, actually, this is absolutely perfect. So here I am going to share a few of my stories and a few of other people's stories of what they're working on today. So we see sustainability, or we see climate change, as one of the greatest challenges of our time and humanity's response to it. There was a recent report by the IPCC, I don't know if anybody read it, it came out in August 21, and it actually said that unless there is an immediate and rapid reduction, large-scale reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, we are not going to be able to keep the world at heating up for more than 1.5 degrees. So there was an agreement in 2015 at COP21, 195 UN member states said, we are all going to come together and we're going to make sure that the world doesn't heat up by 1.5 degrees, because if we do, if the world keeps heating up and heating up and heating up, the world as we know it and humanity's existence within it will perish, basically. So we all have a collective responsibility, and COP26 is looming, it's in November, and so we're all looking at one another to understand, what are we doing here and what else do we need to do? Many companies, like us, map their sustainability goals to the SDGs. But for today's presentation, and we actually represent all of the SDGs at Microsoft, but for today's presentation, we're just going to focus on the environmental ones, which are carbon, water, waste, and ecosystems. Along the bottom there, you can see another metric that we have, which is around standardizing digitized data. Because one of the challenges around sustainability is actually that there's no sort of common taxonomy, common units and methods of measurement. And this has been one of the challenges to overcoming sustainability. And so we have committed by 2030 to make sure that there is standardization in this area to accelerate the outcomes for our customers. And yes, sustainability is good for business. So what we're seeing here is that, yes, it is the right thing to do, but actually because of changing regulations, consumer preferences, that actually organizations are doing more and more in sustainability. And some of the statistics that we draw upon, so there's actually huge opportunities here, and some of the statistics that we draw upon here is that by 2028, £60 billion will be spent on energy efficient technologies. And also, the precision agricultural industry will grow by 12 billion. And the global carbon emissions offset market could be worth up to 200 billion by 2050. So there are many, many opportunities for business here, as well as the consideration of managing their own risks. So I've already called out conformity on taxonomy and the need to have good units of methods of measuring sustainability. We also need to improve the way that we disclose around sustainability, and transparency is absolutely key, so that we can make sure ourselves and other organizations are not greenwashing in our efforts. So the good news here is that technology can help. And that's why we see the digital transformation and sustainability is utterly linked at its core. And strategic prioritization must occur to accelerate sustainability outcomes if we want to expedite solutions. So for us, we break this down across 4 areas. First of all, there needs to be a top-down approach, as with all these things, the culture around upskilling the employees, the role that they're going to play in the sustainability agenda. And then we need to look at ourselves, and we need to be able to communicate with our customers and what do they need in sustainability, and what new products and services are they going to need, driven by data and AI and machine learning and all the things that you guys are talking and hearing about at this event. Also, we can look at replacing legacy equipment, so that's in physical spaces around energy efficient equipment, implementing waste monitoring and management programs so that we can reduce the waste that we're using, technology via smart buildings and smart facilities so we can really make sure again that we're reducing the amount of waste. And finally, where we can, moving our workloads to the cloud so that we're not using sort of carbon intensive on-prem data centers. And also we can also look at utilizing technology to support healthy design, thinking about the whole design process, the whole value chain, how we're using materials, how we're sourcing those materials, how we're, again, minimizing waste. The ability to be able to recycle and reuse is really important here. So yes, of course, I'm going to mention it now, I'm going to mention it again, probably a few times, that data is absolutely core to overcoming and accelerating sustainability. A key ingredient so we can collect data, and we can analyze it, and we can clean it, and we can draw insights from data, often vast sums of data, both structured and unstructured. And here you see a simple schematic that we've produced that just sort of shows through the intelligent cloud how you can capture the data more easily now, and then aggregate it and analyze it, drawing meaningful, actionable insights. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now on those 4 environmental pillars that I talked about and drawing down on a few case studies so we can see how technology is supporting sustainability goals. So the first one's carbon. It's the one that most people hear about: carbon neutral, carbon negative, net zero, etc. So there's loads and loads of opportunities here to really utilize tech. We can gather, we can analyze data on carbon impacts of both your organization and your customers' organizations using AI data and machine learning for energy forecasting and monitoring, and also deploying flexible smart grid solutions so that we can really manage our energy and distributed managed resources, balancing supply and demand of energy, improving operational effectiveness as well. So a case study here for you. They've done a huge amount in reducing their own emissions, Adja Energy, based in Norway. They utilize something called the Azure Smart Grid to operate their grid more effectively. And there's millions of sensors collecting data so they can have a virtuous loop, feedback loop with their customers. So again, thinking about how they can manage the supply of energy and also reduce emissions at the same time. We're also, so in response to our own efforts and what we need to do, and also responding to what our customers are looking for, we're producing something called the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, really exciting solution that's going to be coming out in the next few months. And it's going to really help organizations track, measure, report on their carbon emissions, not just of technology not just of our technologies, but of all technologies. So that's something that's coming out. It's a SaaS-based offering. But in the meantime, if anybody is using Microsoft solutions, cloud-based solutions, they can take advantage of the Microsoft Sustainability Calculator to track the emissions related to our services. So some carbon accounting that you can utilize today. Water. So it's really inextricably linked to carbon, because it's often used to make energy. But also, lots and lots of industries are highly dependent on water, obviously agriculture and food producers, but the fashion industry and manufacturing industry. And there is a very limited supply of fresh water. You know, we are a water-based planet, but it's seawater, and we can't use seawater. So we need to preserve our fresh water supplies. So we need them for humans, and we also need them for business. So it's really important that businesses understand this and are able to manage their water supplies more effectively. And opportunities exist with data analytics and machine learning to find innovative ways to manage the demand. And moving on to a case study here, Marriott Hotel, they have 6,500 properties globally, and they really need to maintain high standards of cleanliness as part of their business operations. But they also need to make sure that they're not wasting too much water. So they utilize solutions from one of our partners called Ecolab, and that's really helped them save and really make some improvements against their sustainability goals. So some of the statistics here are 3.3 billion litres of water have been saved as a result of implementing this technology, 21,500 metric tonnes of carbon, and 2 million pounds of waste by implementing these systems. Waste. So many companies have been recycling for quite a long time now, thinking about recycling in their offices and also in their production processes. But now they're thinking about how they can reduce waste across their entire value chain, because they need to be able to reduce the amount of materials used in the first place. They're thinking about how they can reuse materials rather than use virgin materials as well. So lots and lots of opportunities here for technology to support, but it actually means applying circular thinking to our design processes. So we're not the old linear system of take, make and dump. You know, we need to be circular in our thinking. So how can we use technology to support that? And one of the case studies that we have here is from H&M. Now, in the fashion industry, 30 to 40% of clothes end up in landfill. 95% of those don't need to. So what H&M have done is they have used the smart recycling bins in store. This was piloted in America. And consumers can go in and they can put all their clothes in the smart bins. And through sort of digitization, they can be given some personal preferences or perhaps what they want to buy next. There's a nice little consumer story there. And also, H&M have been able to track that they have saved £5 million, well, they have recycled £5 million worth of clothes in weight, and as a result of that have planted 100,000 trees. Ecosystems. So ecosystems is really important because we rely on the planet enabled to be able to produce whatever we need to in our businesses. You know, bees, we need bees for pollination, we need fish in the sea to be able to have fish on our tables. We also need to be able to use finite materials and things like computer chips and batteries. So we need to understand what are our ecosystems and how do we operate business within the natural ecosystems. So one of the things that we're doing here at Microsoft is actually creating something called the planetary computer, and where we're bringing in data sets from all over the world, geospatial data sets, and we will aggregate all of this data and make it available to organizations so that they can analyze data on a scale that they haven't been able to before. And also we have a grants program called AI for Earth, and that's been around for a few years now. And this is where we put sort of the cloud-based advanced analytics in the hands of some really clever niche specialist organizations who can help overcome some of those sustainability challenges. One of the case studies that I just draw upon when I think about ecosystems is I think about what the US Department of Agriculture is doing. So they're wanting to understand, well, the farmers over there want to understand how they can produce crops more effectively, more sustainably. And so there is something called Azure Farm Beats, which allows them to use sensors, and it allows them to use satellites to be able to collect all sorts of data, and so that they can monitor. And actually something that's really clever here is that a lot of farms are really remote and they don't have very good internet access. So they're actually using one of the unused broadcast waves through the TVs to be able to transmit information over to these farms. This is actually an industry-specific solution that hopefully will be scaled out, currently being piloted at a 7,000-acre farm in America. I just wanted to end my presentation on the financial services industry, which is an industry that's pretty close to my heart, where I spent the last 3 or 4 years. As a result of all of the new ways that we need to reimagine businesses and we need to accelerate sustainability outcomes, that absolutely all needs financing. All the mitigation, all the adaptation, all needs financing. So the finance industry is absolutely key to accelerating sustainability. And so therefore it becomes no shock that they're really placing high priority on this initiative. As a result, they are also looking to reimagine their business models, and this is what you can see here. It's a schematic that we are thinking about in terms of how financial industries need to reimagine how they go to business. Because ESG priorities are probably, at the moment, they're sort of well, not so much nascent, but they are growing in importance. But it won't be too long before they are the norm rather than the exception when financial industries think about investing and issuing loans, etc. And data management enabled by artificial intelligence is what is key to helping to drive the ESG transformation. They think about new ways to understand risk-reward models, new ways to understand how to invest. And a small case study that I've picked on today is actually a B2C case study. So the Italian bank here have come up with an app, and they're honing in on millennials, understanding that millennials are really thinking about sustainability and environmentally positive choices when they think about their banking, well, think about it in everything that they're consuming. So they actually created an app, and this app it provides them with content, provides consumers with content on potentially different ways to think about their financial products, and also through analytics, it can identify how people are spending their money and a CO2 metric for every euro that they spend, so then they can serve up better choices to the consumers through this app. So a really great novel app. And then you've got, at the other end, you've got the business to business. And so we've got here an example of Swiss Re, and they are looking at using, sort of analysing all sorts of, like I said, structured and unstructured data so that they can understand, what does risk look like in this new world? How are we going to provide the right finance at the right price when we need to think about environmental metrics and social metrics and governance metrics, which is ESG, as part of everybody's portfolio. So really it draws me to a bit of a close to say hopefully I've been able to demonstrate to you guys today a little bit about the opportunities that exist to think about sustainability as part of every project and every process that we're all working with. But they are global challenges without borders. So this is now more than ever, we all need to come together, Microsoft with its partner ecosystems, businesses within industry, coming together to solve some of these challenges. Obviously, they all compete with each other, but at the same time, these are challenges that we need to make sure that we work together on. So really, finally, just to say thanks so much for listening. And if your organisations that you're working for haven't started thinking about this, really get started today. And if you want to know any more about what I've talked about, we have all sorts of resources publicly available on the link on the screen, as you can see there, microsoft.com/sustainability. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, that was fascinating. We, BizClick, have actually just announced that we are planning to be carbon neutral within the next few years.
Fantastic.
And it's far more daunting than you imagine it would be.
Yeah.
Because you saw, well, yeah, I mean, we've been speaking to some companies that specialise in this, and we thought, plant some trees, offset the commuting, that kind of thing. But it goes all the way down to the way you run your office. What equipment do you need to have on at this particular point? Does that room need the light on? All of these kind of small things that you don't think about and actually could quite easily be helped with technology, because realistically people aren't going to remember everything on a daily basis.
Exactly. How much can we automate so that people, with the lighting example, it's making sure that lights go off automatically. I hope one day we'll see a black London, at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we don't need those lights on, do we?
Something that rang very true is that there is no standardised climate reporting, really. Is there a solution to that?
So lots and lots of organisations are looking at how the role that they can play. So there are some standardisations out there, maybe not so much at a global level, but the EU are bringing in, they've just released their new guidelines, on taxonomy. So that's one of the big areas. So where can we get this sort of standardisation of classification? What do we mean by environmental, social and governance metrics? What's underneath the skin of all that? So that's coming out. We've obviously got at COP26, one of the outcomes needs to be some standardisation, some agreement on standardisations of data. And that's 195 member states are going to be at that. So that's really one of the key outcomes. And that's why we put in that goal as well around 2030. I think businesses, governments are coming together to say, okay, so what does this all look like? So I definitely think there's hope. It's been, I think, I haven't been working in sustainability for maybe a few years, but those guys who've been working in it for 30 years have probably seen the massive journey that we've all gone on. So, and I think the more that we all do, we will all get there, rather than burying our head in the sand saying, God, we can't do it because it's just too complicated.
Yeah, no, that's true. We've had some questions sent in by people watching online. One question here, what industries do you find to be lacking in a sustainability focus? And why do you think that is? And how can we work to overcome such resistance?
Oh, yeah, what a question.
Yeah, good luck.
Where do I see it less? I mean, do you know what? I honestly don't actually know where I see it less.
Yeah, you've given some positive examples. So the energy companies, obviously, very big push on that. You mentioned banking and some manufacturing as well. Is it just so ubiquitous now that actually everyone's having to at least publicly look like they're doing?
I mean, so you've got things like the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which was set up by Mark Carney a few years ago, and loads of all the biggest organisations now have a requirement to think about their their carbon, their climate-related risks as part of running a business. So I would say that pretty much all industries, I mean, if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I will try to find the answer about any laggards that we've got. I mean, I think the financial services industry is really doing a lot, and I think you think about the role that they play. If they get the risk-reward model wrong, then, the financial system, as we've already seen in 2008, is going to come under some sort of trouble. That was for different reasons, right? So I think they have really been grappling with this. And they have a really big role to play, as I said. So I think they're definitely not lagging, but I feel like they've got a big shoulder of they've got a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, and they've got a lot of work to do to really try and mainstream this, rather than it being, I mean, I probably should have pulled out some stats, but let's say it's 30% of all assets under management at the moment, and it needs to be, like I said, at some point it's going to be the norm. Every single project, every single investment, every single project you run as a business will need some kind of investment, and that investment will be looked at, under scrutiny to understand whether there's going to be any environmental, social, positive outcomes as a result of that.
Yeah, that probably leads on to this quite nicely.
Right.
Good luck with this one.
Oh, God.
So even with recent climate disasters, Australia continues coal mining. What can technology, let's not single Australia out, let's use that as the example that the person's given, but what can technology companies do to encourage adoption of change?
So there's a few ways. First of all, it's the consumers at the grassroots level, but that's one aspect. Companies will see, if they haven't seen it already, that the regulations are going to come in, left field and say you've got to do this. So, and I think we'll see that as an outcome of COP26, that government's committed to giving, the UK government committed to giving 100, I'm going to get my stats wrong, million or billion, to sort of catalyse the next stage in sustainable development. But that is a fraction of what's required. Trillions is going to be required to basically accelerate this. So I think organisations will see that they have to, as a result, like the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures is one thing that's coming, or has already come, I should say. So I think we're going to see organisations, and I think also companies will see that, I was just trying to think about the coal example there, how we can, we all have a role in technology, right, to just continuous to be curious around these sort of nascent technologies. If we think about carbon sequestration, really nascent at the moment, but how can we keep nudging? How can we all in the individual roles that we all play just be like, no, that's a bit difficult, I'm not going to do that. Right, let's see about how we can use technology to think. So not necessarily, so I think about technology, I think about different types, so I think about solar panel or hydrogen fuel cell, I was talking about that this morning. So lots and lots of opportunities for different types of renewable energies powered by technology.
Yeah. Now, someone was clearly listening to me earlier because they've asked the question, what's the first step that an organisation can take to reach their own climate goals?
So I think that there's various I think there's various ways to answer this question. I think one of the things that they can do is you take Microsoft, I think there's about 120,000 of us, apparently there's even more than that. We've got a massive program at Microsoft to make sure that all of us are upskilled in sustainability. So if we have a corporate agenda, how on earth can we achieve that corporate agenda, which is in part about how we can help our customers, if every single person in Microsoft doesn't know about sustainability and why it matters to them in their role. You know, when they're busy going about their roles, just trying to sort of do some marketing or do some sales or do some product development. So I think the very first thing that you can do is not forget that you've got an army of ambassadors within your own organisation, and really focus on how they can be upskilled and how they can make it part of their everyday, so that it becomes normal for them, and the why for them. So I mean, that's principles. I mean, that's change management principles, really. Build that awareness and build that desire for people. And then when you've got that bit sorted, at the same time, I think you can think about what you're offering to your customers.
That makes perfect sense, thank you. Natalie, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
My pleasure, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much.